negative response must be triggered the illogical
What was scheduled to be a flawless royal engagement, cameras ready, smiles rehearsed, unity carefully staged, took a sharp turn the moment Catherine, Princess of Wales, stepped toward the microphone. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Her words were smooth, controlled, and graceful, yet sharp enough to cut through the room. They weren't meant only for the crowd. They were aimed with intention at someone seated just a few feet away. Queen Camilla's smile slipped. Only slightly, but enough to be noticed. The tension was impossible to ignore, and millions watching from home felt it too, even if they couldn't explain why. What began as a formal celebration quietly transformed into a moment that rattled the monarchy. This was the speech that shook the palace, and its echo has never fully faded. As the event unfolded, the sun hung low over the city, casting a warm golden glow across the towering facade of the Royal Albert Hall. Rows of Union Jack flags fluttered in the evening breeze, signaling pride, tradition, and unity. The setting promised elegance and order. Nothing suggested disruption, yet appearances can be deceiving. This was no routine gathering. Months of planning had gone into the night, which was broadcast nationwide as a tribute to heritage and service. The Grand Hall was filled with dignitaries, decorated military veterans, respected charity leaders, and foreign royals. Every seat held significance, every guest chosen with care. Every detail had been rehearsed to perfection, from the polished marble floors to the floral arrangements framing the stage. Nothing was meant to go wrong, not even for a second. At the heart of the royal seating area sat King Charles and Queen Camilla, their presence anchoring the evening. Camilla wore a deep blue gown, regal and commanding, accented with diamonds that shimmered under the lights. She carried herself with the trained composure of a queen, offering smiles, nods, and quiet acknowledgements to familiar faces. The program rolled on smoothly with speeches, musical performances, and tributes honoring service to the nation. Still, everyone knew the real centerpiece of the night was yet to come. When Catherine, Princess of Wales, was announced, the applause rose quickly and held strong. She stepped forward in a tailored ivory dress that stood out sharply against the darker tones of the hall. There was a quiet authority in her posture, a confidence that pulled every eye toward her as she approached the podium. She paused, letting the room settle, then offered a polite smile before placing her notes carefully on the stand. Her opening words were expected. Gratitude, acknowledgements, praise for the organizations being honored. Her voice was steady, measured, and perfectly tuned for the acoustics of the hall. Cameras shifted smoothly to capture her from every angle, knowing her image would dominate headlines by morning. In the royal box, Camilla sat with her hands folded neatly in her lap, nodding at appropriate moments. Her expression remained composed, calm, controlled. Yet something had changed in the air. As Catherine moved beyond formalities, her tone softened, but the depth behind her words grew heavier, drawing the audience forward in their seats. She spoke about the meaning of service, not as ceremony, but as commitment. She spoke of integrity that does not bend under pressure, and leadership that places responsibility above personal comfort. There was no accusation, no raised voice, yet her phrasing was exact enough to stir whispers among the guests. In the royal box, Camilla shifted slightly, her eyes fixed on Catherine with an intensity that cut through her polished exterior. Whether intentional or instinctive, the Princess of Wales had begun weaving a message that stretched far beyond the printed page. In a room filled with those fluent in royal nuance, it was impossible to miss. The atmosphere grew heavier. This was no longer a routine speech. Something more deliberate was unfolding in real time. The shift was subtle at first. Catherine's voice remained warm, but the weight behind her words deepened with every sentence. She stopped relying fully on her notes, glancing down only briefly before meeting the audience directly. Her gaze moved across the hall. Veterans in the front rows, charity workers who had dedicated their lives to service, and then, for just a fleeting moment, the royal box where Camilla sat. She spoke of trust, calling it the foundation of any enduring institution, stating that without trust, even the grandest walls will crumble. Her tone stayed calm, but the message carried undeniable force. Cameras captured every word. Backstage, producers exchanged quick glances, fully aware that something unexpected was happening. The audience remained silent, completely locked in. Catherine continued, speaking about accountability, not as a burden, but as an honor for those entrusted with influence. She explained it was the only way to ensure public service remains worthy of respect. She referenced history, noting that those remembered most were not honored for titles alone, but for unwavering dedication to truth and fairness. In the royal box, Camilla's expression tightened. Her smile remained, but it no longer reached her eyes. King Charles shifted slightly, his hands gripping the armrest. The tension between the stage and the box was invisible to viewers at home, but inside the hall, it was unmistakable. Catherine spoke next of unity, urging bonds built on honesty rather than weakened by self-interest. Her voice grew steadier with each line, as if she knew her message was landing exactly where it needed to. Journalists several rows back scribbled furiously, already shaping the headlines forming in their minds. As she moved toward her conclusion, a quiet energy settled over the hall, the kind that follows moments of rare authenticity. Catherine thanked those in attendance for their tireless work and for upholding values that, in her words, should never be compromised for convenience or personal gain. Her final sentence, delivered with unshakable calm, triggered a long, deliberate wave of applause. Camilla joined in, clapping politely, her rhythm measured, her eyes locked firmly on the princess. This applause wasn't warmth, it was restraint. In that moment, everyone paying attention felt the shift. What was meant to be a ceremony had turned into a statement, and its implications were only beginning to unfold. The room froze briefly after Catherine's final words. The applause carried weight. Enthusiastic, admiring, but layered with awareness. Camera operators moved instinctively, capturing veterans rising to their feet, charity leaders exchanging approving looks, and foreign dignitaries nodding with controlled respect. Then the lenses returned to the royal box. Camilla's hands clapped softly, but her posture was rigid. The slight downturn of her lips spoke volumes. Her gaze stayed fixed on Catherine, as if searching for meaning beneath the calm. King Charles leaned forward slightly, as though ready to speak, then stopped, allowing the moment to pass in silence. Around them, other royals maintained their carefully neutral expressions, refined through years of public life. Yet their eyes revealed curiosity, even unease. The hall itself seemed to hold its breath between the end of the applause and the next program cue. The Master of Ceremonies returned to the stage with a practiced smile, thanking the Princess of Wales for her moving address and signalling the orchestra to prepare. His voice was warm, but his glance toward the royal box was quick and telling before he disappeared backstage. Behind the scenes, producers and coordinators exchanged hushed remarks. One whispered that Catherine had gone off script. Another insisted she had only shifted emphasis. The truth sat somewhere in between, but the impact was undeniable. The program continued, yet the heart of the evening had already passed. Whispers spread through the audience as guests leaned closer, sharing questions without answers. Some saw the speech as a graceful but pointed reminder of values slipping from public life. Others viewed it as a thinly veiled critique aimed at someone seated only feet from the podium. Catherine returned to her seat with the same composed confidence she had shown all evening. She smiled politely at those she passed, acknowledging the applause still echoing in pockets of the hall. When she sat beside Prince William, he leaned in slightly. Calm expression, intent eyes. Whatever passed between them stayed unspoken, and perhaps that silence said everything as the orchestra began to play and its rich notes filled the space. The warmth that once filled the hall didn't vanish. It hardened. What had felt celebratory only minutes earlier now carried a brittle edge that refused to fade. Guests tried to refocus on the music, but their attention kept snapping back to Catherine's words. Even those with no real interest in palace politics felt it in their gut. This was no longer just another night of royal duty. Something beneath the glittering surface had shifted, and everyone knew it. The ripples were already forming, and it was only a matter of time before they turned into waves. As the orchestra played on and the evening schedule marched forward, those closest to the monarchy couldn't stop replaying Catherine's speech in their minds. This wasn't the kind of address that could be brushed off as ceremonial fluff. Every line felt intentional, stitched together like threads in a tapestry meant for a specific audience. Only certain eyes could see the full pattern forming in the quieter corners of the hall. Longtime royal insiders exchanged looks that said more than words ever could. Some recalled a charity reception years earlier, where whispers of friction between Catherine and Camilla had first surfaced. Back then, it was easy to dismiss the talk as exaggerated gossip. But now, with Catherine's phrasing still ringing in their ears, those old rumours felt less like noise and more like early warning signs. The tension between the two women had never spilled into public view. Insiders often described it not as hostility, but as a clash of philosophies. Catherine was known for her meticulous approach, rooted in duty and moral clarity, a belief that leadership demanded consistency and restraint. Camilla, capable and experienced in her own right, leaned toward a more practical style that some quietly labelled opportunistic. Their differences were usually buried beneath layers of royal politeness. Tonight, those layers felt paper-thin. Royal watchers would later dissect how Catherine structured her speech around trust, integrity, and leadership. Analysts pointed out how her examples praised figures who endured scrutiny without personal gain, a choice that felt deliberate to anyone tracking recent controversy tied to Camilla. Backstage, members of Catherine's team exchanged restrained nods. They knew the speech carried weight, but the reaction in the hall had exceeded expectations. One aide quietly suggested Catherine had personally refined certain lines just hours before the event. If true, then the phrases causing the most murmurs were no accident. They were last-minute decisions made with precision. In the royal box, Camilla's composure stayed intact on the surface, but the tension in her shoulders told a different story. She leaned toward a senior aide, murmured something under her breath, and received a quick nod in response. Notes were scribbled fast. King Charles appeared aware of the undercurrent, yet chose not to intervene, keeping his focus on the performance unfolding before them. Among the guests, the shift was immediate. Conversations that should have centered on orchestral tours or charity milestones kept circling back to the speech. Some praised it as a refreshing moment of truth inside an institution known for restraint. Others warned it cracked the carefully maintained image of royal unity. By the time the next segment began, the hall had returned to polite applause and practiced smiles. Still, the question lingered beneath the surface. Was this Catherine issuing a warning, or was it the first step toward something far more public? As the program continued, Queen Camilla's presence became its own quiet spectacle. To the casual observer, she looked composed, posture upright, hands folded neatly when not clapping. But to those fluent in royal body language, the signs were clear: the subtle finger tapping, the tightened jaw, the way her eyes lingered on Catherine just a beat too long. Catherine, seated nearby with Prince William, appeared completely at ease. She smiled, nodded, and engaged warmly with those around her, as though she had delivered her message, accepted its impact, and moved on without hesitation. That calm only sharpened the contrast, making Camilla's effort to appear unaffected even more noticeable. Cameras periodically panned to the royal box for reaction shots, placing Camilla under a spotlight she couldn't control. She maintained the polite smile expected of her, but it looked fragile. During one standing ovation, her applause started a fraction of a second late, a tiny delay, but one sharp enough to catch attention both in the hall and at home. At one point, King Charles leaned toward her, murmuring something meant to ease the moment. She nodded in reply, but her expression barely shifted. Whether it was pride, irritation, or both, she was determined not to show more than necessary. Still, the weight of Catherine's earlier words seemed to hang over her every movement. Nearby, senior royals exchanged cautious glances. They knew how quickly moments like these could spiral. A missed smile, a delayed reaction, a hint of distance. All it took was one spark to ignite weeks of speculation. Tonight had all the ingredients. Camilla tried to steady herself by focusing on the program, clapping for performers and engaging in small talk. Yet each time Catherine's name was mentioned by the master of ceremonies, Her expression froze for just a split second before snapping back into place. It was subtle, but impossible to ignore. The contrast between the two women couldn't have been clearer. One moved with the ease of someone whose words landed exactly as intended. The other worked overtime to keep emotion from slipping through the cracks. As the final applause drew closer, Camilla straightened her shoulders, preparing to exit the hall with the same grace she'd shown on arrival. But in a room filled with people who felt the tension, she knew the night's defining memory wouldn't be the music or the grandeur. It would be the unspoken exchange between two women, played out under the brightest lights the monarchy could offer. Once the royal motorcade pulled away from the Royal Albert Hall, the moment was already being dissected. Clips of Catherine's speech, especially her lines on trust and accountability, flooded social media within minutes. The internet did what it always does best: freeze moments in time and invite the world to judge them frame by frame. Television studios scrambled. Late-night producers reshuffled their rundowns. Royal biographers, political commentators, and PR experts were booked at short notice. Early coverage stayed polite, praising Catherine's elegance and clarity. But as the night wore on, the tone sharpened fast. Side-by-side images of Catherine speaking and Camilla reacting spread with captions asking whether the princess had delivered a veiled rebuke to the queen consort. By dawn, tabloids had already gone to print. One headline questioned whether the speech was a reminder or a reprimand. Another declared it a public power move. Broadsheets took a measured approach, focusing on the themes while quietly citing insiders who hinted at long-standing tension. Online, the public picked sides. Some praised Catherine for speaking truth to power. Others accused her of breaking the unspoken royal rule of unity. Hashtags surged, some celebrating her poise, others defending Camilla and accusing the media of manufacturing drama. Inside the palace, communications teams went into overdrive. Carefully worded statements praised the event and its charitable mission, avoiding any mention of tension. Select photos were released showing Camilla smiling warmly, captions emphasizing success and harmony. Still, royal commentators kept the conversation alive. Former aides appeared on morning shows, choosing their words carefully but deliberately. They reminded audiences that Catherine had always been intentional, measured, and precise, and that nothing she said was ever accidental. They reminded viewers that every royal speech underwent meticulous layers of drafting, review, and approval. The idea that Catherine's remarks could have been off the cuff was dismissed almost immediately. The implication was stark and undeniable. Whatever Catherine had intended to say, she had meant it to resonate and to be remembered. For Queen Camilla, this day introduced a new lens of scrutiny. Fashion blogs that once dissected her gown choices were now analysing the stiffness in her expressions, the way her shoulders shifted, the subtle clench of her jaw as she listened. Even the slight delay in her applause during one of the musical performances became a point of public debate, with slow-motion clips circulating online for fans and critics alike. By evening, the story had evolved beyond idle speculation. It became a stark narrative of contrast. Catherine, poised, principled, unwavering, and Camilla, the experienced queen consort, whose confidence seemed to falter under the intense glare of public perception. This was not the type of story built on scandal or gossip. The palace dreaded it precisely because it relied on words, images, and subtle gestures that had already played out under millions of eyes. Millions of viewers across the nation and the world had seen it unfold. Every nuance mattered. Every second was now part of a growing historical record. No one could yet measure how far the ripples would extend. For Catherine, the speech had been a deliberate statement about values, integrity, and leadership. For Camilla, the challenge lay in managing perception, and in royal circles, perception often outweighed reality. By the morning after the event, the palace corridors hummed with the soft, urgent energy of damage control. Aides moved briskly between offices, clutching folders, tablets, and briefing notes, their faces drawn with the knowledge that even small delays could compound the story. A small team had been assembled before sunrise, and they had already combed through coverage, highlighting curating the sharpest headlines, viral clips, and trending social media moments. The plan was theoretically simple: contain the narrative, redirect attention, and prevent speculation from growing into something that could destabilize the public image of the monarchy. Yet in practice, it was nearly impossible. Their first move was to draft a statement emphasizing the charitable achievements of the evening. Every speaker, performer, and honoree was praised. Catherine's remarks were not mentioned, and Camilla was portrayed as warm, gracious, and composed. Carefully curated photographs were chosen, showing her smiling and engaging with guests, her expressions carefully edited to counteract viral still frames dissected online. In behind-closed-doors meetings, discussions grew increasingly delicate. Senior courtiers briefed King Charles on the fast-spreading media storm, his brow furrowed, hands folded, as he weighed the implications. The monarchy had always relied on the perception of unity. A single crack could spread into a fissure if left unaddressed. Camilla herself attended, maintaining an outwardly steady demeanor. She dismissed some headlines as exaggeration, insisting the press was overreading a simple speech. Yet, even within the room, the undercurrent of tension was palpable. It wasn't just the content of Catherine's words that unsettled her. It was the speed at which public interpretation had begun to define her. Under the bright lights of a televised national event, criticism had been immediate and undeniable. Unlike typical gossip, this was visible, measurable, and amplified across every social platform and news outlet. Meanwhile, Catherine had moved on to her next engagement, a visit to a children's hospital. She arrived with her trademark warmth, speaking to patients and families with genuine ease. Cameras captured her kneeling beside a child's bed, holding tiny hands, listening intently to stories about school, favorite books, and weekend adventures. Though scheduled weeks in advance, the public perceived the visit as a deliberate extension of the principles she had highlighted the night before. Every photograph reinforced her image as a compassionate, principled figure, a sharp contrast to the scrutiny Camilla faced. Back at headquarters, Palace Communications briefed trusted journalists, repeating the consistent message: there was no feud, no rivalry, only media interpretation. Stories were encouraged that highlighted shared commitments, charitable causes, and the public service of both women. Yet everyone knew that memory is persistent, and that footage of Catherine's words and Camilla's reactions would linger indefinitely. For the moment, the focus was on managing the storm quietly, preserving dignity, and preventing escalation. The delicate balance between image and reality had been tested, and it was clear that the next time Catherine and Camilla appeared publicly together, every glance, gesture, and smile would be scrutinized. Catherine herself remained unshaken. She focused on her path with measured determination, aware of the swirling media attention, but choosing to act through substance rather than statements. She did not retract, clarify, or soften her message. It had been intentional, and she trusted that her actions would reinforce it more powerfully than any press release. Later in the day, Catherine visited a community arts program in a modest neighborhood. She arrived quietly, greeting staff and volunteers with familiarity and warmth. Children held up drawings, and she crouched to see each one, fully engaged as if cameras were invisible. When asked about her speech, she responded with calm dignity, framing it as a reflection on values she believed should guide public service, never referencing Camilla or the controversy. Private words of encouragement from senior royals and retired courtiers further validated her approach, praising her for reminding the nation of the ethical compass necessary for leadership. In the days that followed, Catherine's presence and public engagements consistently reinforced the image of a principled, deliberate figure. Every appearance, every handshake, every smile was calculated not for headlines alone, but to demonstrate quiet consistency. Those who disagreed with her choices began to acknowledge her unwavering stance. Slowly, the narrative evolved. She was not a challenger to unity, but a voice of moral clarity, a figure who could speak and act with courage under scrutiny. The shift in public perception was measurable. Media coverage highlighted her poise, intelligence, and principled leadership. Polls, though unofficial, suggested increased public admiration. Catherine had shown that subtlety, combined with visible action, could build a lasting influence that words alone could not. International media also noted her balance of modern relevance and traditional royal dignity, contrasting her measured composure with the more scrutinized image of Camilla from the previous night. By the next public engagement, interest in their interactions had reached a fever pitch. Would there be tension, or had calm returned? Catherine remained poised, walking into each event with the confidence that her actions carried more weight than speculation ever could. The Royal Albert Hall had been intended as a celebration of service and heritage, yet it became a quiet turning point, a moment that redefined Catherine's place in the public consciousness. Her words, delivered with precision and clarity, had set a precedent. One could influence perception, convey values, and assert presence without ever raising a voice. Camilla's composure, though outwardly polished, had been tested under the brightest lights, illustrating the undeniable power of carefully chosen words. She was keenly aware of the media storm swirling around her speech, yet she carried herself with the same calm, deliberate rhythm that had defined her public life to those closest to her. There was no hint of hesitation, no desire to clarify, retract, or soften her words. The message she had delivered at the Royal Albert Hall had been intentional, precise, and unapologetic in its subtle power. Each line had been chosen, every pause measured. For Catherine, it was never about confrontation, but about making principles speak louder than titles. And once spoken, she saw no reason to dilute its meaning. The day after the event, she dedicated herself to engagements that reflected the values she had highlighted the night before. She visited a community arts program in a modest neighborhood, arriving without fanfare. Staff and volunteers greeted her warmly, as if she were a familiar friend. Children, naturally curious, clustered around, shy at first, but quickly emboldened by her gentle manner. She crouched to view handmade drawings, asking questions about the colors, the stories behind the sketches, and the pride of the young creators. Photographers were present, of course, yet Catherine moved as though invisible, fully engaged with the people before her. Observers noted that while she did not actively invite questions about the Royal Albert Hall speech, she did not shy away from them either. When one journalist gently asked about her address, she offered a measured smile, stating only that it was an honor to speak on principles she believed were essential to public service. There was no mention of Camilla, no hint of controversy, only the quiet, consistent reinforcement of the values she had emphasized during the previous evening. Throughout the day, she received private words of support from trusted individuals within the royal circle. These endorsements, though discreet, carried weight. Senior figures, long retired from public duties, sent handwritten notes, commending her for reminding the nation of the moral compass that should guide leadership. One note, in particular, highlighted her courage in allowing integrity and ethics to take center stage, subtly underscoring her role as a moral touchstone for the monarchy. Catherine placed these letters carefully in her study drawer, a silent testament to the respect she had earned and the careful thought behind every action. In the following days, her confidence only grew. Each engagement became an opportunity to reinforce her image, not as a reactionary figure to headlines, but as a model of steadfastness, service, and authenticity. Where others might have reacted defensively to scrutiny, Catherine leaned into her work, letting actions speak louder than speculation. Even those initially critical of her speech began to acknowledge her unwavering resolve. The narrative portraying her as a challenger to royal unity began to shift. She was increasingly seen as a figure of quiet courage, one who could act with discretion while leaving an undeniable mark on the monarchy's evolving public perception. For Catherine, this was never about winning a contest of perception. Her goal was to live consistently in alignment with the values she had articulated, demonstrating that conviction, once held, could outlast the noise of controversy. The weeks following the Royal Albert Hall address only amplified this effect. The ripples of that night settled into public consciousness, gradually reshaping opinion. What had initially seemed a potential moment of discord transformed into a quiet turning point. Discussions about Catherine now extended beyond admiration of grace or fashion sense, evolving into respect for her voice, her judgment, and the principles she embodied. Unofficial public opinion polls began surfacing in the press, indicating a notable rise in support for the Princess of Wales. Commentators praised her for addressing sensitive truths with subtlety, never naming names, yet conveying powerful messages. The effectiveness of such discretion further cemented her reputation as a figure of intelligence, tact, and quiet authority. For Camilla, however, the event had left an undeniable mark. Although her supporters defended her and dismissed the controversy as media overreach, the images of her responses to Catherine's words continued to circulate, appearing in online articles, televised analyses, and the constant churn of social media. Every replay emphasised the contrast: Catherine's steady assurance against Camilla's careful composure. Within palace walls, the shift in dynamics was palpable. Catherine's influence, already strong, seemed to grow in ways that could not be quantified by title or duty alone. She demonstrated an ability to connect with the public, inspire loyalty, and command respect through authenticity, a presence that could not be manufactured. International media soon joined the conversation, framing Catherine as a central figure in the future of the monarchy. Newspapers abroad praised her as a modern royal, capable of balancing tradition with relevance, subtly highlighting the contrast between her measured poise and the more contentious images of Camilla from that evening. Public interest surged with each upcoming engagement, particularly whenever both women appeared together. Would the tension be visible again? The nation and the world watched with bated breath. The Royal Albert Hall event had been intended as a celebration of heritage and service, yet it had quietly redefined Catherine's role. She stepped into a space where her words carried as much weight as her presence, where even a seasoned queen consort could be overshadowed, if only for a fleeting, telling moment. That night became less a single page in the ongoing story of royal unity, and more a marker of evolution. A subtle yet unmistakable shift in the public's perception of authority, principle, and power. Catherine's speech, delivered with elegance and precision, had stirred the room and reshaped the narrative around her role. For Camilla, the evening lingered as a reminder of the scrutiny that comes with the monarchy's bright spotlight. It was proof that words, chosen carefully and delivered with intention, could exert influence far beyond ceremony. Long after applause faded, the memory of that night endured, marking a subtle yet indelible shift in history. Any thoughts about this? Share in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more royal stories. See you next time.